Welcome to the Mariners podcast from Sports Ethos, your place for worldwide sports coverage. I'm your host, Tino Ganasius. You can find me on Twitter at TinoJR20 and the podcast at Ethos Mariners. Today, we'll dive a bit into Logan Gilbert's start on Monday against the Rangers, discuss what the Mariners can do with their lineup construction to produce a little more offense, and we'll frame the upcoming series with the Detroit Tigers at Comerica Park. With that said, Logan Gilbert Monday night looked pretty awesome for the first 5 innings or so. Ended up throwing 91 pitches. 56% of his pitches were four-seam fastballs, 24% sliders, 18% knuckle curves, and 2% splitters. What was interesting to me is, he pitched no-hit ball for the first 5 innings. And, at first glance looked great, right? Pretty dominant stuff. Not quite Bryce Miller level, but certainly was trying to replicate some of the stuff that he's seen Bryce Miller do. In watching, he appeared to me as if he had no command. He was trying to fill up the zone with strikes, which he does, but he wasn't necessarily hitting the mitt. And in the 6th, what I saw was that he started to lose a little bit of velocity, maybe 2 miles an hour on the fastball. He went from 96 to 94, but he became really wild, right? And there were quite a few pitches that were way outside of the zone, not even competitive. And that to me says that he was trying to be max effort for the most part for those first 5.5 innings. He got 12 whiffs on 49 swings total. 7 of those whiffs were on 27 of the four-seam fastballs. We all know Logan Gilbert's four-seam fastball is an elite pitch. He gets elite extension, which increases the perceived velocity on the fastball. But I really do wonder, is Logan Gilbert really any more than a number, let's say number 3? I know that a lot of folks have slotted him in as a number 2. I love his durability. He was basically peak Logan Gilbert was on display on Monday night against the Rangers. And what I saw was a lot of four-seam fastball up, slider low and away, try to speed the batter up a little bit with the knuckle curve at some points in time. But I see a number 3. I don't necessarily see that number 2 starter. I did enjoy his start. I didn't enjoy the fact that the Mariners lost. I think he obviously deserved quite a bit more run support. He's after that game. He's 1-2 with a 3.79 ERA and a WHIP under 1 at 0.99. He's also struck out 50 batters in 40 in the 3rd inning. So, he's a huge asset to the Mariners. There's no doubt that Logan Gilbert is a very valuable piece to this team. I do think that both Bryce Miller and George Kirby ultimately have higher ceilings, and barring injury, I think they both will end up with better careers than Logan. But appreciate the start on Monday. He was pretty lights out for the first 5 innings. Again, he lost some velocity. He gave up a single to Marcus Semien in the 6th up the middle and opened up the floodgates a little bit. The only other question I have with him is he only threw 2 splitters in this last game. And the splitter was starting to be a pitch that gave batters a little different look from a velocity standpoint. It's between his slider and his knuckle curve. Obviously, a splitter dives pretty much straight down. And we all saw the cool slow motion video in the offseason of him learning that splitter. So I'd love to see him throw that a little more. My impression is that on Monday night, he just didn't have command of that splitter, and so he stayed away from it. So that's Logan Gilbert. Mariners lost, as we know, 2-1. Really interesting game, fun game to watch. I happen to be a fan of games that are kind of 1-0, 2-1, 3-2 types of games, competitive, intense. I wouldn't say there's a playoff atmosphere, on a Monday night, but from a player's perspective and for me watching it, I definitely felt the intensity there. Second, Mariners lineup. We've all talked quite a bit about how do we get Julio out of this slump? Is he feeling the pressure? Because he's really the straw that stirs the drink, right? He's the Mariners superstar. He's the one that's supposed to carry the team. I wonder if batting him leadoff and all of the attention, anticipation of the game starting is, he would never show it. He would never let us on to the fact that he was feeling the pressure. But obviously he's pressing. He's chasing tons of pitches outside of the zone. Even some of the pitches in the zone, he's not going with the pitch. He's trying to hit everything 500 feet. And I would love to see him, he's very good at going to right center. I would love to see him try to hit some base hits to right center, even in counts where he's ahead, just to kind of get the monkey off his back and get some of that pressure placed elsewhere. He, in this game against Texas on Monday, in his first at bat, he saw 5 pitches and ultimately struck out. In his second at bat, same thing happened. He saw 5 pitches and struck out. He came up with runners on in his third at bat, and first pitch, he swung at a slider that was in the zone but grounded into a double play. And in the fourth at bat, he also hit the first pitch, which was a slider, and that was middle, and he hit into a 5-4 force out, which would have been a double play if the first baseman would have held on to the ball. So what does this say to me? 5 pitch at bat for Julio ends in a K, not the worst thing in the world. Good at bat. You'd like to see your leadoff hitter take 5 or see 5 pitches, allow the rest of the lineup to see what the pitcher has to offer that night. Interestingly, they're facing John Gray of the Rangers, and John Gray was throwing a bit of a tighter, almost a gyro slider last night versus what he's been doing in his previous starts, throwing more of a sweeper. So as your leadoff hitter or your top hitters take more pitches, it allows for the lineup to understand the repertoire that night of the starting pitcher. So I like the 5 pitch at bat in the first, or the 5 pitch at bat in the first inning leading off. He also saw 5 pitches, as I said, in that second at bat, also struck out. But, that's 10 pitches that you take out away from the pitcher and you allow your teammates to see. I think he got impatient in the third at bat. He wanted to produce. He had runners on. And, he does have some swing and miss in his profile. But I think when he decides he wants to hit the ball, he can hit the ball, right? But unfortunately, this first pitch slider that he saw, he grounded into a double play. And he did the same in the fourth at bat. What was concerning for me about the fourth at bat, outside of the impatience, because I'd love to see him take a few pitches every at bat, is that it was a middle slider that when Julio's going well, he's hitting that ball hard, right? Yeah, that's potentially a home run, but he's certainly hitting it hard to right center. And he hit into a 5-4 force out. It's very clear to me that he's pressing and that he's a little bit in his head. So we know that. We know his stat line isn't great currently. Currently, he's hitting 204 with a 271 on base and a 387 slug. 7.1% walk rate and a 29% K rate. That's not good. And your superstar has a WRC plus of 86. So he's 14% less productive currently compared to Major League average. Again, he's 22. I've seen all the Twitter silliness of, sending him down and what's wrong with Julio. I don't know that there's anything wrong with Julio. I certainly don't think there's anything wrong long-term. Long-term, in my mind, he's some version of Ronald Acuna. And we have to ride out these slumps. From a fantasy perspective, we see a lot of folks jump off of bandwagons very quickly because of a slump like Julio Rodriguez has experienced thus far this season. Yes, it's 155 plate appearances, but we have to remember the true talent. You're looking at a 65 hit tool and 70 power with what he's turned into 65 to 70 speed. And that talent doesn't go away because of a slump. That talent is still there. He, to me, is still a 35-35 player, maybe perennial 35-35 player, who's behind Griffey, is probably the second most talented Mariner I've seen. So I have no worries about him, but I do think that getting him out of his slump is going to take potentially some movement in the lineup. So here's my argument. Versus right-handed pitchers, I would like to see the Mariners, when not resting anyone, lead off with JP Crawford. JP Crawford isn't very fast. We all know that. I think his sprint speed on Savant is somewhere in the 30s. However, JP Crawford currently has an 18% walk rate, which is phenomenal. He has a 378 on base percentage. So despite hitting 240 currently, he gets on base 38% of the time, which is 10% more than 11% more than Julio currently. And in 2022, he had an 11.1% walk rate, but he also, hold on one second, he also had a 352 on base percentage last season. So while he's not the prototypical leadoff hitter in that he steals bags and he's fast, he does get on base, and he's, to me, the perfect candidate to lead off for the Seattle Mariners. That's versus right-handed pitching. Versus left-handed pitching, it's not Crawford. I would hit Crawford in the 8 spot, but we'll get to the left-handed lineup in a minute. I put Julio in the 2. I think taking at-bats away from the most talented player on your team is not smart baseball over the course of 162 games. We first saw teams put their best hitter in the 2-hole when the St. Louis Cardinals did that with Albert Pujols. I think Julio in the 2 makes sense. I would put Kelenic in the 3 as long as his confidence remains. To me, those are your 2 most talented hitters. You've got them in the 2 and 3 hole. You can go left with JP, right with Julio, left with Kelenic. Ty France in the 4 at first base. What I saw from Ty France in this game on Monday, and what has been Ty France's MO, is to go up to the plate and swing the bat. If he sees tons of pitches, it's because he's fouling pitches off. His walk rate currently is 7.8%. He only strikes out 13.1% of the time. But when you have a player like France hitting behind Julio, as the lineup is currently 1-2, Julio doesn't have a chance to run when he's on base. And you have, in some ways, if he's not advancing to second, you're wasting the contact and the singles ability of Ty France, or the ability to hit a single, because he's grounding into tons of double plays. You have defenses playing at double play depth when Julio's on base, and Ty France is hitting ground balls all over the place. So to me, having him behind Julio doesn't make sense. You put him in the 4-hole. Hopefully you have runners in scoring position. You know he's going to make contact. He's much more of a 4-hole hitter to me than he is 2 or 3. That's not traditionally speaking, because traditionally you would have more power in the 4-hole, but I like France there. Got Cal Raleigh in the 5, in part to do the left-right alternating hitters. Teoscar Hernandez in the 6-hole as a DH. I think ultimately he is a cleanup hitter, but he's struggling right now. What I saw on Monday night was more of the same that we've seen the past week or so from him, which is that he can't lay off sliders. He spit on a few, but ultimately he's so in between slider speed and fastball speed that he can't catch up with either of them, and it's ugly. I do think he's a 100 RBI, kind of 25 to 30 home run, 100 RBI hitter. When he does hit the ball, he hits it extremely hard. I'm not down on Teoscar Hernandez as much as I think he needs to work it out, but let's let him work it out in the 6-hole, not in cleanup. In the 7-hole, against right-handed starters, I almost said Bubba Trammell, I'm showing my age, or Alan Trammell even. We have, so Trammell is another left-handed hitter who hits for power and has tremendous on-base ability. He has been a top prospect. He's a top 100 prospect for a few years. He's been traded a couple of times now, but I think he deserves at least the strong side platoon at bats in the corner outfield for the Mariners. He's shown that he can hit for power. He's shown that, Taylor Trammell, mispronouncing everything. Trammell has shown that he is worthy of time. And I think that given the Mariners' alternatives in the corner outfield at this point in time, we've got to see what we have. If he doesn't produce, we're looking at trading for a left-handed bat and kind of repeating the Jake Fraley, Taylor Trammell turnstile, which, doesn't make sense. Let's see what we have. We know that he's a talented player. We know that he's a good athlete. At minimum, he's a quad A hitter, but I think that he's a major league regular and can produce kind of in the San Francisco Giants Jock Peterson role, where you're hitting for power, you're getting on base, and we know you can't hit left-handers. I have Eugenio Suarez all the way down in the 8. Again, part of it is to alternate left-right, but I also think we're not always honest about what Suarez actually is. He's charismatic. We love him. He's fun. He plays a great third base, but he's a 3 true outcome hitter at this point in his career. He walks currently has a 9.6% walk rate and a 28.8% K rate and a triple slash of 226, 314, and his OPS is 642. That's not what you're looking for from a hitter in the middle of your lineup. Again, I think he can work it out too. He showed last year that he can hit for power and be a valuable piece. But as of right now, there's no justification for me for him hitting above any of the right-handed hitters currently in the lineup, that being Julio, Ty France, Teo. Then in the 9, the Mariners should do some sort of combination of Caballero and Wong. I love what Caballero's bringing to the table right now. I think he's your prototypical thorn in the side, middle infielder who takes pitches, hits some singles, plays good defense, but is always being questioned as to whether he deserves a roster spot. I don't know that he's a Mariner long-term. I love what he's doing for the team right now. I think he's waking the team up a little bit, right? He's not afraid to get under the skin of the opposing team. He's not afraid to step out of the box and screw with the timing of with the pitch clock. I like that. I think the Mariners need, pardon my phrasing, but some red ass. And Caballero adds some of that. Wong ultimately should be the starting second baseman against right-handed pitching. He still is an above average second baseman. I wish he would stop trying to hit the ball in the air. You're not a power hitter, Colton Wong. It was a mistake you made last year, and it's why your average went down and your production went down. Hit line drives, get on base, be the spark plug type of player that the Mariners need. But until he gets that in line, I have no problems playing Caballero over him. The only real changes that I would make against left-handed pitching is I'd move Crawford down to the 8 hole because he's left-handed and he struggles against left-handed pitching. That would move Suarez to 7. Most everything remains the same. At the bottom of the lineup, it's either Caballero or Sam Haggerty. Sam Haggerty last season hit very well against left-handed pitching, and I'd love to see him do that again. The big change against left-handed pitching would be A.J. Pollock as your DH hitting leadoff. So Pollock was signed to play primarily against left-handed starters, and he over his career has a triple slash of 279, 329, and an OPS of 852. Now, Pollock was a star for a few years there with the Diamondbacks, and so some of those numbers are coming from that time, but he's still a very good hitter. We've seen him produce at times for the Mariners. He had the 2-homer game a few weeks back. The other interesting thing about Pollock is his sprint speed on Savant is still 88. And so for a player in his 30s, who I think we all regard as kind of a grizzled veteran, a little bit older, he's still really fast. And if you want that speed at the top of the lineup, he's a good candidate. So in my mind, you're going to hit Crawford against right-handed pitchers in the leadoff spot, and you'd hit Pollock against lefties. That'd let Julio hit in the 2-hole. I think it would take a little pressure off of Julio, and it's something that I think he needs to get back on track. Getting back to Monday's game real quickly, I think overall the Mariners offense, the Mariners talked a lot about controlling the zone. That was kind of their mantra a couple years ago coming into spring training. And I think the pitchers do a pretty amazing job of controlling the zone, but the hitters don't. They don't take enough pitches. I see the Mariners chased a lot of sliders against John Gray on Monday. Now, slider he was dealing. His slider was a nice pitch, but the overall approach of the Mariners and the pitch recognition seemed to be really off. I know they're facing major league pitching, but there's a lot of guessing. Cal Raleigh guesses all the time. When he hits a fastball out, it's because he's guessing fastball. I don't know that Raleigh has the ability to adjust to a breaking ball when he's looking fastball. Colton Wong first pitch swinging a bit in this game. He needs to be taking 4 or 5 pitches. He's not going to do damage. And so at least tire out the starter and give your teammates an opportunity to see what they're throwing. Cal Raleigh missed a hanging slider in the 4th inning from Gray that was that was up in the zone, but in the middle, that he should have hit out. Professional championship teams hit mistakes, and the Mariners had some opportunities against John Gray and didn't take advantage of them. So I do think that the hitting coach and Scott Service need to work on the approach of really every Mariner hitter as to, why do we take pitches? What are we trying to do here? Are we hunting a specific pitch from a specific starter? John Gray was primarily fastball and slider, and his fastball was up and his slider was down, which we all know is a recipe for success, currently. But target one of them. Spit on the sliders if you can see them, if you can identify the spin, and look for the fastball up, or vice versa. Josh Young in this game, the third baseman, rookie phenom third baseman for the Rangers, did that with Logan Gilbert and hit some balls extremely hard because he was looking in the low and outside because he knew that's where Logan was going, and he wasn't looking for the high fastball. John Gray in this game got 10 whiffs on 15 slider swings. That shows how effective that pitch was, and it shows that the Mariners either weren't seeing it or they just couldn't hit it. He threw 42% slider against the Mariners and 31% four-seam fastballs. He was certainly on his game. I think the Mariners could have scored more than a run to support Logan Gilbert. And again, their approach seems to be all over the board. I don't believe they need to have one approach for the entire team. Each player is going to approach it in a different way, but we need to see more pitches. We need to be targeting pitches. And, every hitter seems to have holes in their game right now. You can pitch to Crawford. You're silly to not throw him strikes because he's not hitting for power. Why would you throw Julio strikes if he's not going to swing? We know Kelenic has problems with breaking stuff. He's been hitting really, really well, but I wouldn't throw a fastball to Kelenic. Ty France, you don't need to throw a strike to because he's ultimately going to swing at everything. He did hit a high and outside fastball out to right field in the first inning against Gray to get the Mariners their only run. But, he's going to chase, and there's no reason to throw him fastballs. Cal Raleigh, is certainly a 3 true outcomes hitter. He's got some holes in his swing. Teoscar can't hit a slider to save his life right now. Trammell seems to be hitting really well. He did have an at-bat in this game where John Gray got a strike call on a pitch that was probably 6 inches outside of the zone, and it threw Trammell off, and he ended up striking out ultimately. But I like his approach, and he does do damage. Suarez, his approach is all over the board. You get 2 strikes on him, and you can throw a slider halfway between home plate and first base, and he's going to swing. And then Caballero is not going to do damage either. So you pump strikes to him, and if he hits a single, you tip your hat. I think there are a lot of holes right now, and that needs to get tightened up, where I feel like we're wasting a ton of great pitching right now, coming from the Mariners starters. So a little bit of negativity there. Mariners are still hanging in there. This series upcoming in Detroit's going to be a lot of fun. Comerica Park, for those who haven't been there, is kind of in the same generation and feel as Safeco Park, or Safeco, T-Mobile. Super fun. Was incredibly big. They brought the fences in center field, I believe 10 feet, and lowered the fences all around the stadium, which, interestingly enough, the baseball savant park factor now in Comerica is 104, which means it's 4% easier overall, or 4% better overall for hitters than it is league average. That's a single year, not 3-year rolling. For home runs, it's 18% easier than league average to hit a home run at Comerica in 2023. For right-handed hitters, it's 23% easier, park factor of 123 to hit a home run, versus their 3-year rolling average, which actually is only 85. So it's gone up a ton. The park factor, home run park factor for right-handed hitters this year. That is in part the moving in of the fence. It's also the lowering of the fence. It's impacted players like Eric Haas and Spencer Torkelson. Even for left-handed hitters, it's now 110 or 10% easier to hit a home run than league average, whereas the 3-year park rolling for left-handed hitters was actually 61. So 3-year rolling, it was 39% more difficult to hit a home run for a left-handed hitter in Detroit, and it is now 10% easier. So the park in general has become much more of a hitter's park than it ever has been. That said, on Friday, it's Marco Gonzalez and his 4.70 ERA against Matthew Boyd, who was the feel-good story for the Mariners. They had him. He came in relief last year for a little while, pitched really well, signed, I believe, a 3-year deal with Detroit in the offseason. Boyd currently is 2-2 with the 5.28 ERA. I'd like to see the Mariners, Mariners have a lot of good right-handed pitching or hitting, as we spoke about. We should be able to hit Boyd a little bit. Saturday's the headliner for me. It's because Bryce Miller is pitching 1-0 with a 0.75 ERA in 2 games, a .42 whip, which won't continue, but is phenomenal. And he struck out 15 and walked 1 in 12 innings. He's facing Alex Faedo, who was a kind of back-end top 100 prospect for a year or two, a couple years ago, got hurt. He pitched 1 game so far, 4.2 innings, 3.86 ERA. Doesn't have quite the stuff. He's right-handed, doesn't have quite the stuff that he's had previously. So I expect the Mariners, they should be able to see Faedo's pitches and hit him a little bit. And then Sunday, it's Logan Gilbert, 1-2 with the 3.79 against Joey Wentz, 1-3 with the 6.09 ERA. Wentz is also left-handed. So the Mariners will be facing 2 left-handed starters. The hope is the right-handed hitters that we spoke of, Julio, Ty France, Teo, Eugenio, can break out of their slumps a little bit against left-handed pitching in a park where the ball is flying quite a bit. Should be fun. We're at this point where we need the hitting and the pitching to intersect, right? The pitching has been lights out, and I don't know that we could ask for anything more from our starting staff. Justin Topa in relief has been phenomenal. Sewald has been Sewald. Gabe Spires come out of nowhere to be a left-handed reliever. I feel like we're wasting great pitching right now with an offense that's struggling. That said, the talent is there, right? Kelnick's been hitting. We know what Ty France is. The big one is Julio. So we'll see what happens with this series this week. This weekend should be super fun. Thanks for joining us on the Mariners podcast from Ethos Sports. Again, my name is Tino Ganasius. My Twitter handle is TINOJR20, and the podcast Twitter handle is at Ethos Mariners.